I'm Kara Ray, founder of Ambitious Moms Balancing Business and Babies. I'm a mother, a stepmother to 3 beautiful children. I'm a wife and a proud entrepreneur. I'm a mindset coach specifically for mothers who desire to strip the mom guilt and own their ambition in business and family life. The Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast is for the ambitious women and mothers who are ready to rise together and empower one another. Get plugged in each week for unfiltered and uncensored conversations between myself and industry leaders who support you, have unwavering points of view, and empower women to believe in themselves. We will be discussing business, spirituality, energy, strong points of views, manifestation, and what I like to call breaking the stigma topics. Conversations that will no longer be silenced. This is a safe place to reclaim your power of being a woman. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast. In this episode today, we were going to be diving into the art of saying no. But before we do, I want to introduce a friend of mine, Mindy Hancock. Holy, I can't even say your name now.
Hello, I will be Minnie for today. That's totally fine.
So Mindy is a mindset lifestyle coach for the bold and ambitious babe who's ready to rock her 9-to-5 and side hustle with ease. Now, Mindy is so, she's on fire. She's so passionate about what she's doing in her life. And she is very all about, living the life that you design. And that's exactly what she's embodying. So I'm so grateful and so happy to share this space with you. I love that we're on here and I cannot wait to have this conversation with you.
Yay! I am so glad to be here. I cannot wait to dive into this topic. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite topic to talk about. So thank you for having me.
Of course. It is my pleasure to have you on here. I like being able to share the space with everyone. That's why I created the podcast.
Absolutely. I understand.
So since we're going to be talking about the art of saying no, I have a question to start everything out. So first, I have 2 actually. First, I want to know if you're celebrating anything and right now. And I also want to know if there is something that you had said no to this week.
Okay, so celebration. Let's start there. Yes, I'm celebrating all the freaking things right now. I feel like I am actually going to probably talk on this for a little bit longer than I should for an intro because something just happened like an hour ago that I am celebrating, but in a different way. But I will first off say that I'm celebrating signing my very first client. So Cheers to that. And my new program, and it's just everything, all the good things happening right now. And then on top of that, I'll just go into what just happened tonight because it was really cool to see. For those of you listening that don't know, Carrie and I work with the same coach. And so we get all the same goodness from our amazing coach. And one thing I know that she talks about is how much money is just energy and that it's abundant. And the state of abundance is kind of like our birthright. And so we all have the ability to be abundant, and it's all about what kind of energy you put behind money. And so you can think that you're always in lack, or you can think that you are abundant, and it kind of depends on what happens from there. But tonight, my husband and I went to dinner, and we sat down, we got dinner, and this little old man came up behind us, and he sat down behind us by himself. And then we saw him, he kept getting up, and he looked really like paranoid and almost like he was anxious and didn't know what was going on. And he kept looking for someone, and he had his menu in his hand. And finally this waiter comes over and he whispered to the waiter, "Can you please tell me how much a burger is? I just want to know how much a burger is." And so the waiter says, "I don't know, it's anywhere between $10 and $15. And the old man said, "Okay, can you give me 2 waters?" And he ordered 2 burgers. And he was just by himself. And then within like maybe a minute, this little old lady comes in and he gets up. And I mean, I have to tell you, tears were in my eyes because he gets up and he greets her and he hugs her. And I'm like, he's here for a date, and he was wondering if he had enough money to pay for their date. So he went ahead and ordered her a burger and him a burger so that he could ensure that he could pay for their date. So of course, being a client of our amazing coach, we, without him knowing, we paid for his dinner because I was just like, it was the sweetest thing I've ever seen. And I just wanted him to not feel that pressure of what I could tell he was already feeling. And so I'm celebrating that and being able to pass that forward to someone else. And then for him, like my husband said, I hope he takes her to the movies or something with that extra money. So hopefully that just kind of led them to a more abundant night. So that was a little bit more for an intro, but it was just a really good thing that literally happened an hour ago. And it just left me feeling just so excited and happy to celebrate that with that little old couple.
See, and I love that you touched on all of that, because your intro can be as long as you want it to be, and touching on a topic like that is powerful. And it's beautiful. Like, that just made me smile. Like, if people could see my facial expressions, like, that is beautiful. And he wanted to make sure that she was taken care of. And that is amazing. And then it was so kind of you to also give to him without him knowing. It was a gift that you were able to give somebody, and he probably will never forget that. He'll probably be wondering who it was. And so he probably will never forget that moment. And so that's a beautiful moment to give someone.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was just, and it wasn't about us being able to pay it for them. It was just for the fact that, like, having a different mindset around money and knowing that, like, he was coming from a space of lack, and he just really wanted to treat his date. And, we don't know what their circumstances are. And I was like, we don't know. They could have lost a spouse, and you just don't know. And so it was a really cool moment anyway. So moving on, what have I said no to? Honestly, I'm going to tell you that I it's harder for me to find things that I say no to now, because I do it with, like, less effort. That sounds horrible, but I don't know that it doesn't sound horrible to me, because I have finally figured this out for myself, and I know what I can show up for and what I can't. And it doesn't bother me to say no to things. So it's harder for me to pinpoint, but I will say probably the one thing that's popping to my mind from this week is just saying no to an extra meeting that I needed. It was something I needed to go to for work, but I had other things that I needed to do as well. And it was like, okay, I can show up in this space, or I can show up in that space. I know I can get all the information. So I just chose to say, hey, I'm sorry, but I can't be here, and it is what it is. And, and went and did the other thing that I needed to do, which, yes, it is my job. But at the same time, it wasn't something that was like, I would lose my job over. So I guess once I have really learned how to do this and learn the art of saying no, it's harder for me to pinpoint those now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, because I just do it. And it sounds awful. I say no to everything, but I don't. I just say no to the things that aren't going to serve me in this, like, space right now. Like, it's just something that I definitely have mastered.
Well, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It is something that I'm moving through and learning myself, and being able to say no to more things, which we'll dive deeper into this whole conversation. I don't think there's a negative connotation at all with being able to say no, especially to the things that no longer serve you anymore. And oh goodness, I said no to 4 things this week because I just was not feeling it, and it would have made me feel depleted. And so I'm going to just, like, roll with this, because we're talking about, saying no and stepping into that. Now, for everybody that is listening, why do you believe that it's so important that we should be saying no? Like, what is the important factor behind it and behind saying no? Like, not just saying no to say the word no, but actually why we're saying no and what it's doing for us.
Okay. So I know that a lot of your listeners will most likely be moms. And I feel like I am not a mom, so I can't speak from the mom's perspective, but I do feel like, even not being a mom, I see that it probably is even more crucial that moms find this art and, like, really hone in on it. Because when you're a mom, I feel like you you're already doing so much for so many. And as a woman, not being a mom, we tend to, being a mom or not, I feel like it's just the female nature to want to do for others. Mm-hmm. And then when you're a mom, you are doing for others all of the time. And so when we aren't able to find that, or we're not able to master the art of saying no, we're constantly giving ourselves and never being able to like really fill ourselves back up. And so what happens is when we begin to just continuously say yes to all the things, that's when we find ourselves in a space of burnout or even a space of resentment. And we might even not know why we resent XYZ. And it could, and I even, we might start resenting people. It might be, even our spouse, resenting something about our spouse or something that they did, or finding ourselves getting mad at small things that shouldn't be happening. But it's in reality, we're spreading ourselves too thin. And I feel like moms, it's so important to find that balance of, okay, I can do all of these things that I need to do and still be a badass mom. And it's okay if I say no to doing this. So for instance, when I say like, for me being a teacher full time, and so I see parents all the time who, especially when it comes to when your kid's in school age, and especially when it's like newly school age, and maybe your kid has never been in school before. I know that a lot of moms want to be like super mom. And so they like are so excited and they want to do all the things for their kid and all the things for their kid's class and help out at every single event. And they want to volunteer at every school program and every school party. And they want to do all the things because it's their kid's first year of school. But then by the end of it, they're like, okay, I'm never doing this again. But the thing is, I understand, but your kid is never going to remember that you planned the Christmas party or that you planned the whatever Valentine's party, but they will remember that you were there, but they won't remember that, they won't know that you planned it. So when they're 5, they won't. So they won't know that you were on the PTA. They won't know that you're on some, they didn't know that you you did some fundraising thing for their school. But they will remember that the smaller, like the other things that you aren't having to completely deplete yourself to get done. So if showing up more at your child's school is not going to serve you, then you shouldn't have to do that. So it's not going to make you a better mom because of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of times that's what's happening is that, well, so-and-so, if I don't say yes to this, 1, I'm going to disappoint somebody. 2, I feel obligated, so I feel like I have to. And 3, if I don't, I am not going to be as good as, Jill over there who's doing all the things for her kids' class or her kids or her kids' sports team. So I feel like there's a lot of comparison there. And what you don't know when you're over here trying to say yes is that Jill is saying yes to all the things, but she's burned out. She is stressed. And when her kids are asleep, she is exhausted and she's drinking that glass of wine and she's wishing that she did not have to do this. But she already said yes to it. And so now she feels trapped.
Yep.
So that's where I think that why it's so, so, so important.
Okay. So I feel like you're reading my mind right now because as we're talking, I'm writing down, comparison, obligation, and then you just keep spewing these things out because as a mom, there has been moments like I'm a mother to a 1.5-year-old and I have 2 beautiful stepchildren that are 11 and 8. And it becomes overwhelming because they have so much going on in school, even outside of school though. They both are in extracurricular activities. And this is something we've struggled with because, we co-parent. So it's not just ours, it's also with their mother. And we struggle with that sometimes because we, in this family, in our home, we strive for this balance. We strive for not just, doing all the things for our kids because we believe that our children are important and they deserve those things, but we also deserve we deserve abundance and we deserve relaxation and to do the things that we want to do. And if I'm constantly hustling and doing everything for them, how am I going to leave space for me? And so we've had like disagreements about the kids being in every extracurricular activity, and we've put our foot down because it doesn't leave space for us. And so I love that you talked about that and the comparison. I have gotten to a point that I don't give a shit what anybody thinks of what I'm doing with my
Mm,
kids or without my kids. I I don't care, because comparing myself to them is only hindering myself. It is doing nothing good for me. And
mhm.
I don't know. I cannot read that mom's mind. I cannot read that other person's mind. Literally, I'm my own person. So they might be looking at me thinking that I've got all my shit in a row, like, but no, my ducks are everywhere. So,
Right, right. Exactly. And when you go back to talking about like extracurricular activities, and then you know that there's always going to be, you know, I think we have to think about too, not just from the stance of you not being able to do it all. We have to think of the kids too. And I don't know that though that is always taken into account,
yep.
that some parents, they're just putting their kids in all of these things. And think about the kids as well. Like, these kids they still have to go to school, they're still having to do homework, they're tired, they're exhausted. So at the same time that you need to figure out what's going to be best for you, they need to figure out what's actually going to be best in the long run, for their child to be successful. That was a side note that I probably shouldn't even gotten into, but I feel like it kind of goes hand in hand. But I think from the teacher's perspective, because I see it so much, like, these kids are at 17 different ball practices in the week,
Oh,
and they're so tired, and it's hard, but at the same time, when we are doing all of these things, I think about, because as a female, and then especially as a mom, whenever you are constantly giving to other people, and then you're putting more on your plate all of the time, because you do feel like you're obligated to say yes, or somebody asks you to help with something or volunteer somewhere, and you continue to say yes, because if you don't say yes, somebody's going to be upset at you, or somebody's going to think differently of you. But what ends up happening before you reach that burnout stage, before you reach that, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know how I'm going to get this all done, and I'm like resenting everything,
yeah.
is something is going to be sacrificed. You're going to sacrifice something. And the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to sacrifice your own self. Obviously, you're going to sacrifice your self-care, but on top of that, that's when our health normally is what goes first. It's easier. We aren't cooking healthier dinners. We're getting takeout because it's quicker. We don't have the time. We're exhausted. It's faster to run through the drive-through. There's so many things that happen, and it happens, and it kind of like snowballs, and we don't even see it happening, because it happens so fast. And when we are in such a fast-paced world all the time, and so things that, I don't know, we kind of take for granted some things. And so when we're so busy, we're so wrapped up in all the things that we have to do, it's just so much simpler to run through the drive-through every night, and before you know, you turn around and first of all, you've spent tons of money eating out, but second of all, you have your health. It's affected your health, and you weren't even realizing it. And so then you're burned out. Your health is now depleted. You're tired, so that's not helping your health either. So you're not sleeping. You're not eating well. You're definitely not exercising. Hello. So there's all these things that are going against you, and it's all just starting to snowball, because the first thing that's going to be sacrificed is yourself, because you're not going to allow your child not to eat. You're not going to allow your husband not to eat. You're going to make sure that your kids have whatever they need for school, or your husband has whatever he needs to go to work, but you're going to make sure that you do without before everyone else does. And so if that means that you are going to sacrifice your 30 minutes of a workout, or your 30 minutes by yourself, that's what you're going to do, because it's easier to sacrifice you than it is anybody else, because nobody will notice that.
Honestly, that is something that I preach on so much in regards to self-care and the importance of a mom. Oh my goodness. And even it's something that I'm implementing with my kids. Like, I've also started implementing that they also need to have their alone time, like time where they can just decompress and do their thing. And usually they do that before bed. And sometimes they request now to do it before. They actually ask, can I go have some alone time? I'm like, you do not have to ever ask me to have alone time. Like, obviously, if we're out doing something, you can't just like peace out on me. But
Right.
if you need to have a moment, have a moment. And, I want to touch on, the whole eating out, the money thing. That was something that we did Because there was so much going on that we allowed that stress in our life to literally take over, that we didn't have enough time, not enough time because we had enough time. We didn't have the energy because we were saying yes to all the things, and we didn't have enough energy to literally cook dinner, and it made it easier for us to go out and pick up the foods. And then this became the issues with our kids, when like it is just this ripple effect of like it affects all these things, because then once we started implementing healthier foods and all these different foods that the kids had never really eaten or seen, because that was a whole thing before too of when I came into play here. I was cooking meals and things that they'd never eaten before, or at least they told me they never eaten before. I'm sure they did.
Right.
So but it literally led to the kids having meltdowns about vegetables because they were so accustomed to going out and eating or getting what they wanted, that we've now changed that. And yes, tonight I went out and we got something for supper, but we hadn't done that in like since the last time the kids were here, which was a week and a half ago. So it's like, that was okay to us. And it's also my stepson's birthday, so we're celebrating a little bit, and so we ate out. But it's not a regular thing anymore. And the meltdowns have come down about vegetables and all these different things. But it is a ripple effect. If you're not going to say no to one thing, it affects so many areas of your life. So I love that you touched on money. I love that you touched on food and health, because that was even something, because like you said earlier, we share the same coach. And I was actually talking to her today about like all these things that I'm implementing in regards to my health, and taking that back and really taking care of myself and getting all these appointments finished and actually booking them, actually following through with them, you know, taking my mental health, my physical health, every aspect. I have literally like placed straight in front of my face, where I'm like, I can't run from this. I need to deal with this. I need to need to grab the bull by the horns basically and take care of it. And that's what I'm doing. And so my life is already shifting and changing, because I'm not saying no to myself anymore. Like I really am being very intentional with taking care of myself, because nobody else is going to take care of me. I'm taking care of me. So I also need to practice what I preach, because like that's what I also want women to embody, is taking care of themselves. And it's so important. And as a mom, your kids are watching you. They're paying attention to everything that you're doing. And if you're not taking care of themselves, they damn sure are not going to take care of themselves either. They are going to learn.
Right. Yeah. And I like that you said that, because I think too, when you said you're taking this time to really take your power back over your health, or your whatever the case may be that you're doing right now. But it's also, you're in a space where you're able to do that. If like, when you were in that space of you were saying yes, I said y'all, like Texas, hello guys.
Love it.
I try not to do that sometimes though. When you guys were, stressed and you're saying yes to all the things, you weren't in a space that you could do that. No. You didn't have the ability at that time to do that. And it was the furthest thing from your mind. But that now that you have started to practice all these things, and you are the woman of your word, you're showing that. And now you're able to, it becomes a ripple effect, but in a positive way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like a ripple effect, positive or negative. And this is one of those, how it positively ripples. And then when going back to what you said, when we were talking about it affecting your health and all that, but going even further, when you're doing all these things and you're saying yes to all the things, and you've got your hands in so many different pots, and you're trying to do all of the things, and you're tired and you're exhausted. And it not only does it affect your health, like we just mentioned, and all of these things, and then once all of that starts happening, what comes next? Your relationships, your husband and yours relationship, your sex life, all of these things start, it's this huge, like you said, it's a huge ripple effect. And so it starts starts with me. So I am going to start letting myself go. And then I'm not going to take care of myself, which is going to in turn, I'm not going to feel good about myself. And then my relationship is going to be a little bit strained. And then my sex life is going to be awful. And then, so there's going to be these things that just continuously happen. And it's just this horrible snowball ripple effect. And that if we don't get a grasp on, it's even harder to come, like, it's hard to come out of it if you don't realize that you're in it. So once you're, I mean, like, you have to just find, like, okay, recognize it and start to figuring out a way to get out of it. But saying no is not, it's definitely not an easy thing. It's not easy. And I will never say that it is easy. And so when I said earlier that I don't remember what I said no to, it's just because I've been practicing this for a while, and it is something that I don't have an issue with as much now. Are all the times that I say no easy? No, they're not. But it's something that I have to really think about. Like, if I don't feel like, I also think about how do I feel when I think about what it is that's being presented to me, or what it is that I have to do. If I have like this, I don't know, this gut feeling, like I even feel just remotely off about it, I most likely am not going to be doing it, because for some reason that is there. It may not be because it's bad or that something bad's going to happen. It may just be like my intuition saying, like, look, girl, you're going to have to slow down, simmer, hold the phone a little bit, because you cannot do this.
Yeah,
so
pump
just
the brakes.
Yeah, pump the brakes, simmer down, slow down, sister, because you cannot do this. So that's basically, like, it's all about not just learning to say no, but learning to tap into your intuition and figuring out, like, listening to that, because your intuition and, like, yourself, like your inner self, it's telling you what to do all the time, but we just don't listen sometimes. We think better. So that's all a part of it. And so I just, I don't know. I really, really wish, like, I wish that I could literally scream this from the rooftops. I'm like, just say no. So I tell all of my friends, I'm like, why are you saying yes to this? And they're like, because. And what's your reasoning? You don't have a reason? Like, or you think that if you don't, somebody's going to be mad at you? So what? Like, if they're mad at you, then they're not, like, if it's a friend thing or whatever, then there are people that you don't want to disappoint. Yes. And there are some things that you cannot say no to. And I agree with that. Like, there are some cases that it's like, you don't feel good about it. You don't want to do it, but you can't say no. And I always tell myself, like, okay, if I say no to this, am I going to die? Probably not. Is somebody else going to die? Probably not. If the answer is maybe, I would probably say yes. But if the answer is a hard no, I'm going to say no, because there's nothing's bad's going to happen. And if you're following what you're being, like, what you're being guided to do, you're going to be supported anyway. And it's there for a reason. So just, like, if you're feeling that nudge of, like, this does not feel good, don't do it.
Yep.
Don't do it.
Well, and I want to touch on two things that you're talking about, because you're talking about people are saying no because they don't want to disappoint other, or they're worried about somebody else's opinion. Well, somebody said this, and I can't ever remember who does, but other people, other people's opinion of you is none of your damn business. Like, none of your business. Just like we don't read people's minds. We can't. If you have that power, well, that's cool. I wish I did. But no, I don't, actually. Just kidding. But I also think that saying no also comes down to being very clear on your priorities. And because just because you're saying no to something right now does not mean that that's not a yes in the future. Like, I just wish people had more perspective in the word no, because it might not serve you right now, and you might not have the space for it right now. But if you're able to accomplish and say no to that now, it might leave space for you later, because what's meant for you will still come your way, no matter if you say no at that certain time. If it's meant to be in your life, it's going to come back always. Right. The universe wants you to have abundance. Whatever you believe in wants you to have abundance. So it's going to come back if it's truly meant for you at the right time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll piggyback off of that. And, like, one of my, like, I feel like it's one of my mantras. Like, I just, like, hold on to it and say it all the time to myself, because I remind myself, if something is meant for me, I don't have to fight for it. It's not something that, like, I have to make happen. Like, I don't have to keep fighting and, like, clawing for it. And it's going to come back to me, whether it happens now or it happens later. It's whatever is meant for me is going to happen. It's already written. Like, it's going to happen. So, so that kind of goes hand in hand with that. But that's something that I just feel like I've been like telling myself a lot lately. Like, if it's not for you, you don't have to fight for it. Just go for it. It's going to be fine.
Yes. Well,
Keep
and
along.
I like how you actually said you're going to piggyback, because now I'm going to go back to something that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about in regards to things suffering when you don't say no to certain things. And I really want to touch on relationships, especially if you're giving to your children, which as a mom, this is what you do. This is just what is programmed in you, and that's fine. However, it is also extremely important to start giving back to you and receiving things back. And especially with your spouse, whoever you're in a relationship with, this is something that my husband and I had to have like a very clear conversation about, because sorry, my computer is going off and I've like muted it, and this whole new computer thing, guys. Oh, this is a squirrel moment, but it just keeps going off. So my apologies. Oh, but in regards to things suffering, my husband and I had to have a very clear conversation about our relationship and our sex life, because it started dwindling down because we were not putting a priority on our relationship. We stopped going out on dates, and don't stop going on dates, people.
Right.
It's so important, especially if you're parents. Gosh, go with each other. You need that time alone. And our relationship was suffering. We weren't communicating properly with each other. We were maybe passing each other because we were doing all the things for our kids and sending them here, there, that we never got to see each other. And so by the time we got into bed, there was no way in hell that I wanted to do anything. I didn't have the energy for it, nor did I actually want to, because everything that was going on in my life, I was starting to resent, like you were talking about. And then I was taking it out on my husband. And we had this conversation where he wasn't actually doing anything wrong. But I was so angry with him because of everything else that I was not controlling in my life, or not saying no to, or not being grounded in. And so it's so important. I just had to really touch on that, because I speak from experience. And I remember sitting there with my husband crying, because I was so scared about where we were going and what was happening with each other, and that we were having sex like maybe once every 2 weeks. Nope. Sorry, that is not what I like for my sex life. And it's our conversations, we would sit on our phone, but then not have enough time to speak to one another. It was just so bad, because we just didn't want to have conversations about it. And we avoided until it literally smacked us in the face. And we had to deal with it. And I'm glad that we overcame that. And anytime that we catch ourselves almost kind of going back into that, we notice it right away. We talk about it, we figure it out, and we go from there. Because obviously there's something in our life that has to give. And so I had to touch on that.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, the last thing, like you said, the last thing that you want to do, it's like you just want to crawl into bed. You're so exhausted, and much less talking. Like, you don't want to talk, much less do anything else. Like,
if I can't talk, I'm sorry, I don't want to do anything.
Yes, I cannot talk, much less anything else. Like, I'm so done for. Like, call me grandma, I am done. So yeah, I love that you said that, because it's so, so true. And you just have to figure out when is enough enough. Like, you just really have to come to that point. And I hate that sometimes it does come to that, like, it comes to that breaking point. It comes to that, everything has to come to a head, or it comes to that point where it's like, you just have a breakdown. And I hate that sometimes that's what it has to come to in order for things to change. But that is what has to happen for some people in order for someone to be able to make some sort of positive change. Something has to happen sometimes. But if not, like, you just have to really figure out, okay, when is enough enough? When am I going to allow myself, or when am I going to not allow myself to continue to do this? When am I going to quit perpetuating this cycle? Because at some point, like, you're going to self-destruct at some point. Like, some point, this is not going to end well. And I think a lot of times when we get so wrapped up in, like, I feel like I can't say this for anybody in particular, but I feel like sometimes things that come to a head, or things might end, or things, I'm not going to say whatever the case may be, but some things I feel like can be prevented. because if we have the ability, or we have the what is the word, the word the, like, we're able to see, we're able, the perception, the perspective, what is the word?
I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't know.
No, I did this earlier the other day. I was at work and I kept saying, like, what is the word? It was like on the tip of my tongue, and I'm trying to figure out my word, and this would not come. Okay, so whenever we have the ability to see what is going on in front of us, and sometimes we're just so far into it, so far into our hole that we can't even see what's going on. But when we are able to see, like, okay, look, this is not working. How can I begin to make a change?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if we are able to do that, we can prevent some things going awry that you might not be able to come back from in some ways. Like, you will be able to come back from, but I'm talking about relationships. Like, there are some things that you don't, like, we might be able to prevent some things happening that might not have to go as far as they did. When, if we just kind of come to a head and decide to, like, have this tough conversation, or this tough, like, really it is a conversation, a tough conversation with maybe your spouse or whoever it is, whether it be that you need to change some things. It might be a tough conversation that you need to have with yourself, really. Yeah. Like, stand in the mirror and have a conversation with yourself. Like, what do you need to do? How can I show up differently? Am I doing the best that I can do for everyone? Probably not. If I am this, like, spread this thin, you might be showing up in all areas and more, but you're not showing up as your best you.
Yes.
If that makes sense. So yes, 100%. You're doing all the things, but you're not being the best mom. You're not being the best wife. You're not being the best sister, or best, I don't know, employee, whatever it is. So in reality, you're not doing anybody a favor.
Nope. And I want to touch on a couple things here, because we were talking about how, things can lead to having a meltdown, or like that basically you have to deal with it all, and it ends up being very emotional. And so whatever you believe in, because I firmly believe in, like, the universe, and and that if you're not going to deal with what is going on in your life, it is going to keep coming back, and it is going to keep coming back. And then it's going to hit you in the face because you haven't dealt with it, and it's going to make you deal with it. And it's going to make you deal with it in regards to a breakup, or a loss of a friend, or some major thing is going to happen if you continue to avoid it. This has happened in my life, where there has been relationships with friends that I have not, been honest with what I felt, that it kept, like, building and building and building, and we ended up having this big argument, and we've never talked to each other since. Or this big argument with my husband because I chose not to say how I felt in the moment. And then I kept it in, and I kept it in, and then I lost it on him 2 weeks later for 2 weeks worth of things, which is not fair. And so it's super important to deal with it in the moment, to process it and learn how to let it go. And if you can't process it, there's a block, and that's got to be figured out. It has to be figured out. And I think a big thing also with, learning this ability to say no is really being confident in your values and your boundaries, and knowing who you are as a woman, as a mother, and standing so freaking tall and fierce in that nobody can budge it, like nothing. And that was something that I had to work on, because I kept doubting my abilities as a mom. I kept second guessing all these things that I was doing, that I was comparing myself. Well, that was a lack of confidence in me and what I was doing. My life is not perfect, and there is no such thing as perfection. There is no such thing as perfection. And the one thing, if you're a mom, your kids, like you were touching on this too, like your kids, they can be stretched thin too. But the one thing, like, even when I talk to my kids about things that they remember feelings. They remember how they felt in a moment. And so we talk to our kids in regards to feelings, and how, what are they feeling in this moment, to talk about it. And every time we go out and do something, they're like, oh, I was so happy. I felt so loved. I felt so this. You remember when you gave me that big hug? And, remember not the gifts, not these grand gestures, but how you actually made them feel. And so it's super important that if you can't afford, like, if you can't go out, your kids don't care what you buy them. What they want is time spent. That's all they want, is time spent with you. And so I think people need to stop we live in such, you were talking about this too, how we live in such a fast-paced world, or this world where people assume that they have to have the best thing or this best next thing. And that is not true. Our home is like, this is the perfect way that I can explain it. My parents, so my dad and my stepmom, they lived in a very small house, like 800 square foot home, no basement, one level, shared a room with my brother till I was 18 years old. That home they still live in, that is my home. That is what I feel comfortable in. That is where I feel centered. That's where I feel grounded. And that's where I've shared so many memories in that home. No way, shape, or form is that based on every materialistic thing that's in there. What it's based on is the relationship that I have with my parents and with that home, and the experiences that I felt inside that home. That's what made it home to me. But my parents were very confident in the way that they raised their kids. They were very firm, very strict, very, very firm in their boundaries and values. And they knew those things and they stood in confidence. But that was because they also learned how to say no. My gosh, I don't know how I was not comfortable with saying no, because my dad was a freaking pro. Saying no.
My dad too. He still is.
Yep. And so is my dad, where he's like, nope, that don't serve me. Nope. Like, no, doesn't even think twice about it.
No.
And so how I didn't, I wish that was just something genetically that you could just take in. But he literally has mastered that art of saying no. Or I'll call him and I'll say, hey Dad, can you do this? No. Like, before I even finish it, he's like, no, I don't have the time or energy to talk about it right now. No. I'm like, oh, Kate, I will call you later.
Yes. And even my dad, like all my nieces and nephews, they like, no, he will say no to like everything. And so now it's like this grumpy, he's like, we call him grumpy, or like, he's grumpy, and they call him Poppy, and they're like, Poppy's grumpy. Like, they know not to ask him most of the time. Sometimes they can get to him with their little eyes, but it just depends on what it is. But most of the time, especially as us as a kids, everything was no, I feel like. And then you couldn't even, like you said, couldn't even get the sentence out, and he was no, like, done.
But it wasn't no because it was a no because whatever that was that I was asking or wanted to do wasn't something that was going to serve him or serve our family or even serve myself. Like, he knew what was really best for me at that time.
Oh yeah.
And so him saying no was to teach me, wasn't a negative thing. No's are such great lessons, and it pushes you like into your boundaries, and you get to know what you firmly stand in. Until I really reevaluated my inner circle and myself and my family and where I wanted to go, I had to be so extremely clear about so many things. And I said no to so many things. And some of those things were so hard, where it took me a year to say no to them anymore, or time to realize that was not the way my life was going anymore. Before I went into the entrepreneur and decided to coach, I worked as a paramedic. I was a paramedic for 5 years. And this is completely different. But it took me 2 years to finally tell myself that I wasn't going to be a paramedic anymore. It took me 2 years to actually firmly say that statement without wanting to cry, without wanting to cringe, without feeling like I had failed in some aspect. But I never failed. That was a beautiful portion of my life that now no longer serves me, because I have a family, because I want to spend more time with my family and be present and be there. And that career was not going to provide me with that. And so I had to make a big decision that was so, so hard, and it took me 2 years. So when you're saying that it's hard to say no sometimes, it can be, but we can also make it much harder, where I made it much harder on myself because I kept thinking of all the things that I could be missing out instead of thinking about all the things that I was gaining, instead of thinking in this space of lack and scarcity. So I had to touch on that because I was in a completely different spot in my life and that career. And I respect everybody who works in those fields. It was taking a piece of me that I could not give anymore. It was taking too much from me. And when I had my daughter, when I actually had a child, I mentally could not, go to those calls that had to do with small children anymore. It just completely changed. And moms, I bet you if you're on here and listening, you probably can relate, because I drive differently now. I do so many things differently because it's not just my life that is in my hands anymore. It is
Yeah.
also the lives of my children. And so,
Mhm.
oy, that's a whole other
Yeah.
topic for a whole other story.
For sure. Yeah, it just goes back to deciding that, in the moment that you can either look at whatever this decision is and look at it from a space of, why do I have to do this? Or like you said, scarcity and lack, or you can look at it in from a place of abundance and like, why is this going to serve me, and how can I be powerful in this moment, and decide to be powerful and be bold and say no and see what, and know that if it's meant like that, if you're feeling this is what you're supposed to be doing, that it's okay. And if something doesn't feel good for you, then it's okay to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to. And I feel like I say this a lot. I've said this in group coaching, and I just feel like I've said this over and over, but I feel like when we are birthed into this world and then we become adults at the age of 18, when you turn 18, there is not like this in the mail comes along with all the credit cards that they want you to sign up for when you turn 18. There's no rule book about how to be an adult and all the things that you need to do and all the things that you shouldn't do. So there's no rule book. So there's like nothing saying that in this life you have to do this, this, and this. Like, you don't have to. It doesn't say that you have to be the mom who does X, Y, Z. No, nowhere does it say that. You don't have to be the mom that has your children in every single extracurricular activity and be the mom who takes donuts up to the school every morning. Like, you don't have to be that mom, and nowhere does it say that you have to be. And so we just have to understand that we have to stand in whoever we are, like you said, stand firm in it and be unapologetic about it, and know that it's okay, that you are who you are for a reason, and it's okay to show up as you. Because even coming from looking at it, if I'm looking at it from a mom's perspective, even though I'm not a mom, but if I could look at it from your perspective, I would say, like, when you're showing up in that way, you're showing up authentic, you're showing up saying, like, you know what? I know that this is not going to work for me. I'm going to say no. I'm going to be powerful. I'm going to be bold. I know that this is not meant for me. I know this is not going to work for me. I am going to be unapologetic about it. You are showing, like, your children, and I feel like, especially if you have a little girl, like, you're showing such a bold, powerful example for your child and your little girl to just, like, you know what? I want to be a badass just like my mom. That's what I want to be. I want to be just like her. And so just showing her what it is, what it looks like, because I feel like that is so powerful for a little girl to see, like, my mom is awesome. She's rocking it. She's doing all the things, but she still has time to sit down with me and play, or she still has time to sit down and do homework with me, or she still has time to take me to this place, or whatever the case may be. And she is not always stressed about how we don't have enough time to do it. So I feel like there's just such a huge power in being able to do that and set that example.
I agree. And I want to touch on that too, in regards to, this was actually a conversation that I had with my stepson probably about 2 months ago. And he was very emotional this one day. And, this was a moment where my husband and I, we were getting very busy. We were finalizing a couple things. And so it was taking away some time, which we explained to the kids, but it really weighed heavily on them. Mm-hmm. And he came to me and he said, I just want to play a game with you. And I said, okay, what do you mean you want to play a game? He's like, I want to play Battleship with you. And he's like, I just want to spend time with you. I want to spend time with you. And he brought it up that we seemed stressed and that he could feel it and that he wanted to take us out of this space. And I remember sitting there looking at my husband and saying, holy crap. Like, he is so in tune with what is going on in our life that he wants to take us out of this. And I said to my husband, I don't want him to feel like he has to take care of us. Not that I don't love that he has created this quality in himself to see those things and to want to do those things. But at the end of the day, I want to be the person that's showing up for him and making sure that he's loved and cared for, not making sure that I'm got all my ducks in a row. And so we had this big conversation. We talked to him after, and we played Battleship every day for a week straight because that's what he wanted to do. And I actually love that game. That game is like so
Yeah.
good all the time. But we paid attention to that because it was time spent. And, we touched on that before too, about you can say no to doing all these other things. Like before our kids are like, oh, let's go to the movie. Let's go to the movie. Well, our little one was too little to go to the movies, and we all wanted to do it as a family. So instead of doing that, we blew up a bed in the living room. We bought popcorn. We bought some candy because we went to Bulk Barn, which was so good. And we came home. We went and got movies. The kids got to pick out a movie, and that experience was so much better because we were able to laugh. We were comfortable. We didn't have to worry about like the next person kicking our seat or anything. We just got to be in that moment, and they cared about those moments. And so just because we said no to going to the theater opened up so much space for all these other things, which leads into my last question for you in regards to okay, so if you've ever said no to something, which I know you have because you've mastered
Couple
this,
things.
what has this open space for you? You saying no to something that might have been difficult for you, what did it open up space for? And then you realized, why the heck was I worried about saying no?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Man, I feel like being able to say no has allowed me to open up space to receive so much more in so many different.
You froze.
I don't know what just happened.
I just messaged you too. I have zero clue, but it's recording, and that is more than okay. This is something that I can edit out, and we're good. We are good.
Oh my gosh. I was like looking, and then your face was just frozen, and I said, hello. And then I just sat here for a second, and then it just all went off. I was like, okay.
Weird. Mine didn't go off. It has been here the whole time, and your face is like this.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Good thing that you can edit this out so that nobody has to hear all of that. Okay, so question about what it opened up. Okay, so being able to say no has not only opened up the ability for me to show up in better in so many areas, but it has also allowed me to be able to receive so much more goodness coming my way because I'm actually have the space to receive it. Because before I did not have, so now I've learned to say all these things. I've been able to receive a new business. I've been able to, did it do it again? It did it again?
I don't know. I'm going to edit this part out, but I am telling my husband to get everybody off of their internet because I feel like my stepson went downstairs and turned on a bunch of stuff.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't either.
We're breaking Zoom.
We are breaking it, man. This is a killer freaking podcast interview. Okay, maybe we should finish this part up and then before Zoom decides they don't want us on anymore at all. Yours. Oh my gosh.
It's working right now, so just go for it.
Okay, how about right here? You ask me the question again. You can edit all this junk out and just ask me the last question again.
Okay. Oh dear. Okay, thank you. Oh, her hand, Chris.
This is so fun.
And I love that I can edit this out because
Me too.
Dear. All right. Well.
Super fun. Okay, back
so
to it.
I had one more question for you in regards to what was something that you said no to that completely opened up space for something that, moved things forward for you? Like, what did you let go of what no longer served you that opened up so much space for the things that did?
Okay, I think that this question I actually have a couple of different answers, but they all coincide together and kind of work together in the same aspect and for the same goal. But the first thing is I was in network marketing for about 3 years, and I just started feeling a really strong pull to do something else, and I didn't know what it was. But I didn't really want to, I didn't want to leave my network marketing company. Like, I didn't have anything against them. I loved my upline. Everything was great. I just was feeling called to do something different. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't really know what to do. So the first thing that happened was when I decided I did some coaching courses trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I did one with our coach. And then I ended up doing a consult with her. And then that's when I felt really like, okay, this is where I need to do something. I need to make a move. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm hiring her. Like, my husband said, what's your plan? Like, why are you hiring her? I said, I don't have a clue. Like, I really don't know why. I don't know. Like, as he says, are you doing it to help you with this, with your network marketing company? Like, what are you doing this for? And I had no clue. Like, I just knew that it was the right thing for me to do. I felt it like all the way down in my bones. Like, I could not tell you why, but I knew it was the right thing. Mm-hmm. And so when I took that first step and I said no, I said yes. Back up. I said yes. And I decided to jump all in. Well, then the first thing that happened is nothing would work. Like, every form of payment I tried to use, like PayPal was being crazy, would not allow me to pay her. And so at that point, this is kind of a weird way of saying no. I could have just turned and walked away, and it was really easy to do, but I told myself no. And I said no to this because this is a different way of saying no, but I'm getting to the other one. But I said no, and I kept moving forward, and I made it happen, and I figured it out, and it worked. And because I did that, I started to make these shifts in my life and figuring out what it is I really needed to start taking off my plate, because things weren't serving me anymore. And one of those things was network marketing. And I didn't know why. I still to this day really don't know why I was called out of it. But now I didn't know, but now I really feel like it's because I was being called into the area of coaching. And it didn't make any sense to me at the time, but I decided to say no because it didn't feel good for me anymore, even with how hard it was and how it made me sick. Like, I literally cried because I didn't know, like, I felt like that was who I was, and everybody knew that's what I did. And I don't know, I just felt so weird to walk away from, because I almost felt like I failed almost. But instead I walked away and I said no to that because it wasn't serving me anymore. And I could clearly see that. And when I did that, I not only was able to step into this new space, but I allowed so much more room to receive all of the new things that were happening for me, that were here for me this whole time. I just had to like basically strip away all the things that weren't serving me and start to say no to the things that weren't, so that I could like see the things that were laid out in front of me. And I couldn't until I started to say no and figure these things out of what was really serving me. So that was probably the biggest thing for me, that when I think about what did I say no to and like walked away from, because I do think that sometimes it's not just like what is presented to you, like, oh, can you do this? And my answer is no. It's maybe something that you're currently already doing, something that you're already doing that you realize, oh, this is not serving me anymore. Like, it's time to walk away from this. It's time to walk away from this job, or it's time to walk away from this, whatever it is. Sometimes you just have to let things go. And once you do, you leave yourself open to receive so much more.
Yes. And I wanted to, because you were talking about saying yes to our coach and making that big leap and not really knowing where you were going with it, but it was just the right decision, and you just knew in your gut that it needed, that was the right area and that you had to go that way. And I remember, you know, we had just talked about this actually, about the massive shifts from when I first, you know, hopped on that call with her and was talking about my network marketing company that I was a part of. And literally that was my first focus. And I remember she asked me this question: is this all you want to do with your life? Like, this is what you want to do? Because she's like, the way you're talking and everything that you have in you, this is not it. She's like, I'm going to be very clear that this is not it. And then we talked about it, and she's like, there it is, right there. She's like, you just said it, no holds bar. Like, you knew what it was. But that was, I didn't know at first. And I think that's so empowering to other people, is that you don't always have to have the answer to say no to something or to say yes to something, to allow it to serve you on such a grander scale.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's like, definitely, you don't always have to have the full vision in front of you. Sometimes you just have to have, like, you just have to surrender to it. And I feel like that's something that we've both learned from our coach, like, just freaking surrender. Even as hard as that sounds, I'm like, no, I need to be in control of everything right now. But when you do, like, just say, okay, I'm going to let it go and see what happens. That's when things just kind of like magically just happen and line up in this like beautiful way. That's when it happens.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to thank you for being on this podcast, because this was a juicy episode. It was fun. I liked all the conversation in regards to saying no, priorities, you know, standing confident in the woman that you are, because this podcast is for moms, but it also is for women, empowering women. And I believe that you embody that, and you teach women how to be confident in who they are, and, you know, that balance, that, which is what I do too, is, you know, creating that balance and showing up where you need to and letting go of the things that no longer serve you. So I want to thank you for sharing this space with me, because it has been amazing to get to know you more and more and more, because you are such an amazing individual. So before we go though, can you please let everybody know where they can find you, so that if they really resonated with this episode, they can connect with you and all that. So lay it on us.
Yes. If you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram at Mindy L. Hancock. And on Facebook, I'm just Mindy Hancock. It's pretty easy to find. And other than that, you can also find me on my new podcast. It should be out pretty soon as well. It's called The Bold Ambition. So you can find me over there, and you will hear Kara on there too. So, but yeah, that's where you can find me if you want to connect with me. And thank you so much, Kara, for having me on, because it was so much fun to just riff back and forth on this topic. It's definitely something that, like, is obviously you can tell I'm super passionate about. So I love chatting with you about it. So thank you for having me on.
No problem. And yeah, thanks again, Mindy. So on that note, guys, I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.